Welcome to Whispered Truth, where touching stories come alive. Let's jump into today's story.
The amber glow of streetlights filtered through the fog, casting long shadows across the rain-slicked streets of downtown Seattle. Alex Carter, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the grungy surroundings, hurried along the sidewalk, head bowed against the drizzle. His fingers, numb from the cold, clutched his smartphone, thumbs scrolling mindlessly through an endless feed of social media updates. At 35, Alex had it all, at least on paper. A corner office with a view of Puget Sound, a sleek penthouse in Belltown, and more zeros in his bank account than he cared to count. Yet as he navigated the bustling city streets, he felt utterly alone, disconnected from the world around him. A notification pinged, drawing his attention back to the screen. Another work email, another crisis demanding his immediate attention. Alex sighed, his breath forming a small cloud in the chilly air. He was about to tap out a reply when a muffled sob caught his ear. Glancing up, Alex spotted an elderly woman huddled on a nearby park bench. Her frail form shivered beneath a tattered coat, her weathered hands cupping a paper cup that had long since gone cold. Something about her vulnerability pierced through Alex's carefully constructed walls. Before he could second-guess himself, Alex approached the bench. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you all right?" The woman looked up, her roomy eyes widening in surprise. "Oh, I'm fine, dear. Just resting these old bones." Alex hesitated, then shrugged off his expensive wool coat. "Please, take this. You look like you could use it more than I do." The woman's gnarled fingers reached out tentatively. "Are you sure it's such a nice coat?" "I insist," Alex said, draping it over his shoulders. As he did so, a faded photograph slipped from the woman's pocket, landing face up on the damp ground. Alex bent to retrieve it, and his breath caught in his throat. The image showed two women, arms linked, laughing on a sunny beach. One was clearly a younger version of the woman before him. The other... "Mom?" Alex whispered, his voice barely audible over the patter of rain. The elderly woman's eyes snapped to his face, a flicker of recognition passing over her features. "Sarah's boy," she breathed. "Little Alex?" Alex's mind reeled. How did this stranger know his mother? And why did she have a photo of her? Before he could form the words to ask, his phone buzzed insistently in his pocket. The real world intruded, demanding his attention. I have to go," Alex stammered, backing away. "Keep the coat, please." As he turned to leave, the woman called out, her voice quavering. "Wait, there's so much you don't know about your mother about that night." But Alex was already gone, disappearing into the misty night, his heart pounding with questions he wasn't sure he was ready to face. The harsh fluorescent lights of Alex's office did little to dispel the chill that had settled in his bones. He stared unseeing at the spreadsheet on his computer screen, his mind 1,000 miles away, or rather, 25 years in the past. The photograph he'd glimpsed earlier that evening had stirred up memories he'd long suppressed. His mother's laugh, warm and bright like summer sunshine. The scent of her perfume, a delicate mix of jasmine and vanilla. And then, the deafening crash of metal, the acrid smell of burning rubber, the oppressive silence that followed. Alex shook his head, trying to dislodge the unwelcome thoughts. He'd built his life on a foundation of ambition and forward momentum, never looking back. But now, the carefully constructed walls were beginning to crumble. A soft knock at the door jolted him back to the present. "Come in," he called, grateful for the distraction. Lauren, his younger sister by 3 years, poked her head in. Her strawberry blonde hair, so like their mother's, was pulled back in a messy bun. Working late again, big brother? Alex managed a weak smile. You know me, always burning the midnight oil. Lauren rolled her eyes, stepping fully into the office. You need to get out more, live a little. Her teasing tones softened as she studied his face. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. For a moment, Alex considered brushing off her concern. But something in Lauren's warm, worried gaze broke through his defenses. I saw Mom today. Lauren's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Alex recounted his encounter with the elderly woman, describing the photograph and the strange familiarity with which she'd spoken of their mother. As he spoke, Lauren's expression shifted from confusion to shock, then to a mix of hope and fear. Alex, she said slowly, you think, could this woman know something about what really happened that night? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. For years, they'd accepted the official story. A tragic accident on a rainy night, their mother's car skidding off the road. But there had always been whispers, half-heard conversations that stopped when they entered the room. I don't know, Alex admitted, but maybe it's time we found out. Lauren nodded, a determined glint in her eye. We should try to find her again tomorrow. Tomorrow, Alex agreed, feeling a mixture of anticipation and dread. As Lauren left, Alex turned back to his computer, but the numbers and charts now seemed trivial, meaningless. He opened a new browser window and hesitated for a moment before typing. Sarah Carter car accident, Seattle, 1998. The search results loaded, and Alex's blood ran cold. There, nestled among news articles and obituaries, was a headline he'd never seen before. Questions surround prominent businessman's wife's death. His finger hovered over the link, trembling slightly. Did he really want to know? Could he handle the truth, whatever it might be? Before he could decide, his office phone rang, startling him. The caller ID displayed an unfamiliar number. Heart racing, Alex picked up the receiver. Hello? A gravelly voice, aged but urgent, came through the line. Alex Carter, my name is Henry. I was a friend of your mother's. We need to talk. There are things you need to know about what happened to Sarah. Alex's grip tightened on the phone. Who is this? How did you get this number? Please, Henry pleaded. Meet me tomorrow at Volunteer Park, near the conservatory noon. Come alone. Your mother's story needs to be told. The line went dead, leaving Alex with a storm of emotions and a decision to make. Would he meet this mysterious Henry? And if he did, was he prepared for the truths that might be revealed? As the Seattle skyline twinkled beyond his office window, Alex realized that the carefully ordered world he'd built was about to change forever. The only question was, would he be the one to tear it down, or would the past do it for him? The next morning dawned gray and misty, typical Seattle weather that seemed to mirror Alex's turbulent emotions. He'd barely slept, his dreams haunted by fragmented memories and imagined scenarios of that fateful night so long ago. As he made his way through Volunteer Park, the conservatory looming ahead like a glass cathedral, Alex's mind raced. Should he have told Lauren about the mysterious phone call? Was he walking into some kind of trap? A figure emerged from the fog, an elderly man, leaning heavily on a cane. His weathered face bore the lines of a life fully lived, but his eyes were sharp and alert. Alex, the man said, his voice matching the one from the phone. Thank you for coming. Alex nodded cautiously. You're Henry? I am. Henry gestured to a nearby bench. Shall we sit? I'm afraid these old legs don't stand for long these days. As they settled onto the bench, an uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Alex broke it first. You said you knew my mother. Henry's eyes grew distant, a sad smile playing at his lips. I did. Sarah was extraordinary, brilliant, kind, full of life. He turned to Alex, his gaze suddenly intense. And she loved you and Lauren more than anything in this world. Alex swallowed hard, fighting back unexpected tears. What happened that night? The real story. Henry took a deep breath. Your father, Robert, was not the man he pretended to be. Sarah had discovered some of his less savory business dealings. She was planning to leave him to protect you and Lauren. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Alex gripped the edge of the bench, steadying himself. What do you say? The accident wasn't an accident, Alex. Robert, he tampered with Sarah's car. He couldn't bear the thought of losing her, of losing his perfect family image. The words hit Alex like a physical blow. He stood abruptly, pacing in front of the bench. No, that's not possible. My father, he loved her, he loved us. Henry's voice was gentle but firm. Robert loved the idea of your family, Alex, but the reality, that was something he couldn't control, and it terrified him. Alex's mind whirled, memories resurfacing with new, sinister undertones. His father's tightly controlled anger, the way his mother would sometimes fall silent when Robert entered a room, the hushed arguments he pretended not to hear. Why are you telling me this now? Alex demanded. Why wait all these years? Henry's shoulders sagged. Fear, at first. Robert had powerful friends, and then guilt. I should have done more to help Sarah. By the time I worked up the courage, you and Lauren were grown, building your own lives. I didn't want to shatter your world. Alex laughed bitterly. So why shatter it now? Because the truth has a way of coming out, Henry said. And because I'm dying, Alex, cancer, I couldn't go to my grave without setting things right. As the implications of Henry's words sank in, Alex's phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. Found the woman from last night. Her name is Mildred. Meeting her at Cafe Solstice in an hour. You coming? Alex looked from the phone to Henry, feeling the weight of decades of secrets pressing down on him. There's someone else you need to meet, he said to Henry. I think she might be able to corroborate your story. Henry nodded slowly. Mildred Davis? Alex's eyes widened in surprise. She was there that night, Henry explained. She saw everything. As they made their way out of the park, Alex's mind raced. What would Mildred reveal? And how would Lauren react to the earth-shattering revelations about their parents? The Seattle skyline loomed ahead, a reminder of the life Alex had built, the success he'd achieved. But now that carefully constructed facade seemed as fragile as a house of cards, ready to collapse at the slightest touch of truth. Cafe Solstice hummed with the low murmur of conversations and the hiss of espresso machines. Alex spotted Lauren immediately, her bright hair like a beacon in the dimly lit space. Beside her sat the elderly woman from the park bench, Mildred, wrapped in Alex's coat despite the warmth of the cafe. Lauren's eyes widened as she saw Alex approach with Henry. What's going on? She asked, her voice a mix of confusion and worry. Alex took a deep breath. Lauren, this is Henry. He knew Mom. As they settled around the table, Alex felt the weight of unspoken truths pressing down on them. Mildred's gnarled hands trembled as she clutched her mug of tea, her eyes darting between the faces around her. I suppose, Henry began, his voice low and steady, we should start at the beginning. Over the next hour, as their untouched drinks grew cold, Henry and Mildred wove a tale that shattered everything Alex and Lauren thought they knew about their family. Sarah, their mother, had been planning to leave Robert, their father. She discovered evidence of his illegal business practices, of money laundering and fraud. But more than that, she'd grown weary of living under the shadow of his controlling nature, of the subtle emotional abuse that had slowly eroded her spirit. "Your mother was so vibrant," Mildred said, her eyes misting with memories. "But over the years, it was like watching a flower wilt in the dark." Lauren reached out, gripping Alex's hand tightly. He could feel her trembling. Henry continued the story, describing how Sarah had confided in them both, how they'd been helping her plan her escape. "We were supposed to meet that night," he said, his voice thick with regret. "But she never showed." Mildred picked up the thread. "I was worried, so I drove by your house. I saw Robert tampering with Sarah's car." Her voice broke. "I should have done something, said something, but I was afraid. And then it was too late." The silence that followed was deafening. Alex felt as though he were underwater, the sounds of the cafe muffled and distant. Lauren's grip on his hand had become painful, her nails digging into his skin. "No," Lauren whispered. "No, Dad wouldn't. He couldn't." But even as she spoke, Alex could see the doubt in her eyes. Memories were resurfacing, taking on new, sinister meanings in light of these revelations. "There's more," Henry said gently. "Robert, he knew we were helping Sarah. After the accident, he made it clear that if we ever spoke up, there would be consequences, not just for us, but for you two as well." Alex's mind reeled. The father he'd idolized, the successful businessmen he'd strived to emulate, it had all been a carefully constructed lie. And their mother, she'd died trying to save them from a truth they'd never known. "Why now?" Lauren asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why tell us all this now?" Mildred and Henry exchanged a look. "Because," Mildred said, "your father is dying." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Robert Carter, diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer, had only months to live. The truth, so long buried, was clawing its way to the surface. As the full weight of the revelation settled over them, Alex felt a strange mix of grief, anger, and something else, a fierce determination. He looked at Lauren, saw the same fire in her eyes. "What do we do now?" she asked. Alex squared his shoulders. "We get justice for Mom. We make this right." As they left the cafe, stepping out into the gray Seattle afternoon, Alex felt as though he were seeing the world through new eyes. The city he'd conquered, the success he'd achieved, none of it seemed to matter in the face of this newfound truth. His phone buzzed. A text from his father's assistant. "Mr. Carter requests your presence at the family estate this evening. Urgent matter to discuss." Alex showed the message to Lauren. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As they made their way through the bustling streets, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The truth had been unleashed, and there was no telling where it might lead them. The Carter family estate loomed before them, a sprawling mansion that had once represented the pinnacle of success to Alex. Now, as he and Lauren approached the wrought iron gates, it felt more like a mausoleum, a monument to lies and shattered dreams. "Are you ready for this?" Lauren asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex took a deep breath, steeling himself. "As ready as I'll ever be." They found their father in his study, a room that had once seemed the epitome of power and prestige to Alex. Now the dark wood paneling and leather-bound books felt oppressive, suffocating. Robert Carter sat behind his massive desk, his once imposing frame now gaunt and frail. "Alex, Lauren," he greeted them, his voice a shadow of its former strength. "Thank you for coming." For a moment, Alex was struck by a wave of conflicting emotions, the ingrained respect and admiration for his father warring with the newfound knowledge of his true nature. Lauren's hand found his, squeezing gently, grounding him. "You wanted to see us?" Alex managed, his tone carefully neutral. Robert nodded, gesturing for them to sit. As they settled into the plush leather chairs, he fixed them with a penetrating gaze. "I suppose you've heard by now about my condition." "We have," Lauren said softly. A heavy silence fell over the room. Alex could hear the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel, each second feeling like an eternity. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he spoke. "We know, Dad, about Mom, about what really happened that night." Robert's face remained impassive, but a flicker of something fear, regret, passed through his eyes. "I see," he said slowly. "And who, may I ask, has been filling your heads with these stories?" Alex felt a surge of anger. Even now, facing death, his father was trying to manipulate the narrative. "Henry and Mildred," he said, his voice hard. "Mom's friends, the ones you threatened to keep quiet all these years." Robert's lips thinned. "You don't understand. They never did. Everything I did for this family." "Family?" Lauren exploded, her usual calm demeanor cracking. "You killed our mother. How could that possibly be for us?" The words hung in the air, sharp and accusatory. Robert seemed to deflate, sinking back into his chair. For the first time, Alex saw his father not as the titan of industry he'd always appeared to be, but as a frail, scared old man. "I loved your mother," Robert said softly. "More than anything, but she was going to leave, to take you both away from me. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. So you decided it was better for us to lose her instead." Alex's voice was cold, controlled, masking the turmoil within. Robert's eyes met his, filled with a desperate plea for understanding. "I never meant for it to happen like that. I just wanted to delay her, to have time to convince her to stay. I didn't think—" "No," Lauren interrupted, her voice trembling. "You didn't think about us at all, about how losing Mom would affect us. You only thought about yourself." The truth of her words seemed to hit Robert like a physical blow. He slumped in his chair, suddenly looking every bit his age and illness. "You're right," he whispered. I've been a coward all these years, hiding behind my money and power, pretending everything was fine. But now," he gestured weakly at himself, "now none of that matters anymore." Alex felt a complex mix of emotions swirling within him: anger, grief, and a strange, unexpected pity for the broken man before him. "What do you want from us, Dad? Why did you call us here?" Robert reached into his desk drawer, pulling out a thick envelope. "This contains everything: bank records, business dealings, a full confession of what happened that night. I'm turning myself in." The siblings exchanged shocked glances. This was the last thing they'd expected. "Why now?" Lauren asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I'm dying," Robert said simply. "And I don't want to leave this world with the weight of my sins crushing you both. You deserve to know the truth, to have a chance at closure, and your mother, Sarah, deserves justice, even if it's long overdue." Alex took the envelope with trembling hands. "What happens now?" Robert met his gaze steadily. "That's up to you, both of you. I've made my choice. Whatever you decide to do with that information, I'll accept it. It's the least I can do." As they left the study, Alex and Lauren found themselves in a daze, the weight of the envelope feeling far heavier than its physical mass. They stepped out onto the manicured lawn, the Seattle skyline glittering in the distance as twilight descended. "I never thought," Lauren began, her voice choked with emotion. "I know," Alex said softly, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Me neither. They stood in silence for a long moment, the cool evening breeze rustling through the trees. The world around them seemed both familiar and utterly changed, as if they were seeing everything through new eyes. What do we do now? Lauren asked, echoing Alex's earlier question from the cafe. Alex looked down at the envelope in his hands, then back at his sister. In her eyes, he saw the same mixture of pain, anger, and determination that he felt. We honor Mom, he said firmly. We make sure her story is told, and we use this, he hefted the envelope, to make things right. Lauren nodded, a small, sad smile playing at her lips. She would have wanted that. As they made their way down the winding driveway, leaving behind the mansion that had once represented their family's success, Alex felt a strange sense of lightness. The truth, as painful as it was, had set them free from the weight of unspoken secrets and half-formed suspicions. In the days and weeks that followed, Alex and Lauren worked tirelessly to unravel the complex web of their father's business dealings and to bring the full story of their mother's death to light. They established a foundation in Sarah's name, dedicated to supporting victims of domestic abuse and white-collar crime. Robert Carter's confession sent shockwaves through Seattle's business community. He spent his final months cooperating with authorities, his public downfall a stark contrast to the powerful image he'd cultivated for so long. For Alex and Lauren, the journey was far from over. They had years of grief and misconceptions to work through, relationships to rebuild, and a legacy to reclaim. But as they stood together at their mother's grave, placing fresh flowers and whispering long overdue words of love and farewell, they felt a sense of peace that had eluded them for 25 years. The truth, they discovered, was both a burden and a balm. It had shattered the illusions of their past, but in doing so, it had given them the foundation to build a more authentic future. As they left the cemetery, hand in hand, they stepped into a world that was at once familiar and entirely new, a world where their mother's memory could finally rest in peace and where they could begin to write their own stories, unburdened by the weight of long-buried secrets.
Hey, want to listen to another best story? Then click the floating video and subscribe for more.